Laura Ingraham. This is Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, they're dropping like flies. Hunter Biden lost another attorney. He didn't misplace it. The guy quit. So what's going on? We'll examine that in moments, but first. With a track record of abysmal failure for Black Americans, Democrats now see that there's real risk of declining support from that constituency that they once thought would never abandon them. So how do they shore up the Black base? Support tougher criminal laws in the inner cities? After all, violence is affecting Black Americans the most. Or are Democrats revisiting their slavish devotion to the teachers' unions, who are adamantly opposed to school choice? Americans, especially minorities, stuck in bad public schools now have no options. Or is Biden finally going to let up on the climate madness and bring the cost of energy down? Well, the answers to all of the above are no, no, and no. Now, why would Democrats agree to any of that when they could just call Republicans racist?
Have seen Donald Trump use a word that rhymes with a racial epithet, and that's been adopted on extremist sites to refer to blacks.
This week, he used a word that rhymes with the N-word in one of his posts.
Okay, they won't even say the word. The word is like rigged election rigor. Does that mean going forward no one should use the phrase trigger warning either? If that's the case, what are liberals going to do? And remember, the Democrats can always count on the press to help fan the flames of racial division as well. Because if one wacko threatens one judge who happens to be Black, then the press is going to say essentially all Trump supporters are racist too. Eugene Robinson in the Washington Post writing that it was always just a matter of time before threats against the public officials holding Trump accountable became explicitly violent and racist. Now, why was it just a matter of time? Because in Robinson's warped thinking, supporting Trump is akin to supporting cross-burning. That's just disgusting. They never had such concerns about Kavanaugh when he was threatened. And when these cynical ploys don't work, other press surrogates pick up the slack, trying to argue for a type of self-segregation or, in fact, the creation of Black states. The well-known progressive Charles Blow argues for greater Black power through migration, but he doesn't seem to understand why Black migration southward has already occurred. Because, like other Americans, Black Americans are moving to greener pastures, or I should say redder pastures, where crime is intolerated and the economy is actually vibrant.
I believe that if Black people simply return to the South, they could significantly increase their own political power, which has the potential to not only upend the politics of that region, but also of the country as a whole. There is no way to truly have power in the country if you do not also have access to state power.
So crowd all Black people into one state? I don't understand this argument at all. And as I said, Black Americans are already migrating southward. But as a liberal, Mr. Blow undoubtedly thinks that state measures such as reparations, the teaching of CRT, and higher taxes would help Black Americans. Of course, we're already seeing, though, aren't we, where that path leads. In states like California, they're on the precipice of doing some type of reparations, and it's all a disaster there. And of course, Mr. Blow implies that anyone who takes issue with his ideas is a racist.
People freak out when I say that I believe that some states should be majority Black. But I always ask them this question: why are you not freaking out that every state but Hawaii is at least a plurality white, and that there are 7 or 8 states where 90+% of the population is majority white?
Well, first of all, people aren't calling for majority white states. That's one reason, Charles. Of course, all of this rhetoric encourages more separation of the races and less integration. People actually getting along, getting to know each other. Now, this is a sentiment we've heard before, though. A New York City council member, this was a few years ago, actually celebrated when he lost white residents.
I have the distinct honor to be able to come before you and say I actually lost white population in my community. I lost them. They left. So if you see 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 whites in my neighborhood, they're passing through.
That's what militant radicals actually think. They believe that their own racism is justified. They're urging their young people to stay separate. Don't trust white people. Because, of course, white people, they believe, are instinctively racist. Just like the entire system of law enforcement, even when cops are minorities themselves.
The genesis of Back the Blue came out as a sort of collective conservative response to the Black Lives Matter movement. There is an implicit racial and racist thread that runs through this sort of confederacy of people.
Right. Oh, my God. Lord help that woman. And you know what else is racist? The broken windows theory of policing and the idea that you actually lock criminals up.
Giuliani lost his first race for mayor of New York, but he succeeded the second time around after embracing some of the ugliest, most demagogic, racist politics that Donald Trump would later mine to great effect. As mayor, Giuliani oversaw an incredible increase in the surveillance and policing of black and brown New Yorkers.
The truth is, everyone, including African Americans, had a better quality of life in New York when Rudy was mayor. It's not racist to say that things were safer, because the streets were safer. And white liberals now claiming that Rudy's policies were racist are lying. Law and order is not racist. It's common sense. But common sense is out the window with today's Democrats, especially where black voters are concerned. With the horrid record on the economy, the border, crime, all Biden's boosters can do now is dangle a shiny racial division object in front of African Americans. Imagine having such little respect for the intelligence of your own base.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.